On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're breaking down the win in Boston, taking a look at one of the star players on the team, as well as looking into tomorrow night's game against Colorado. All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Tanker. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Locked On Lightning. And just a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we're breaking down the win last night against Boston. We're taking a look into Steven Stamkos' recent streak of play, as well as wrapping things up with tomorrow night's game against the Colorado Avalanche. And before we get into all that, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel there. So last night, we're coming off a big win. I can't stress, whenever you go up against the Boston Bruins, and not only go up against them and play against them, but also when you go into Boston, into that very, very hostile environment in the Garden, it's huge that you could even walk away with any points. And the fact that the Lightning were able to go in there and not only get points, but win after really a game in which I try to be very positive here on the show, and especially this season. And the Lightning got off to a phenomenal start last night. Let me just say that real quick. They got off to a great start, 2-0 to start the second period, really. The Chernak goal, 3 minutes in, 3.5 minutes in, really. And then you have the Kucherov goal to start things off out of the gate, which I was shocked. I mean, the Lightning were really doing a phenomenal job all night, and especially up until then, really just taking it to Allmark up in front. That's something that really we haven't seen quite a lot from the Lightning this season. And I really think that if you were going to bring that kind of play into any game, it was going to be against the Boston Bruins. And it seemed like everything was going great, which it was. I mean, 2-0 in TD Garden against your division rival and the one that's also in first place and at that. So really, chef's kiss of a start to a hockey game for you. And then we started to see things a little bit start to unravel. And this is where I will say that I really thought, after the Van Riemsdyk goal, I thought that the Lightning were going to lose this game 100%. And I know probably a lot of Lightning fans probably felt the same way as well. That coupled with the fact that the Lightning really didn't get a lot of shots off last night, only 25, and in a game where they were severely outshot, where the Boston Bruins ended up shooting off 38 shots, and I mean, you obviously, if the Lightning lost this game, that would have been probably one of the biggest things that we would have spoken about on this show, is the lack there of shots. I mean, the fact that the Lightning did not reach double digits in shots in any period that they played in just tells you just kind of what kind of game it was. And what it was the Lightning were picking their spots. Also, Boston was doing a very good job of really just shutting down passing lanes, shutting down shooting lanes, just really trying to take it to the Lightning and trying to make it a physical game. And you kind of saw it throughout the course of the game that the Lightning were kind of playing that ever ongoing game of chess that we see in the game of hockey, where it's not so much a game of hockey that you're playing. It's a game of kind of just slowly building up as you get down the ice, kind of chipping away at certain maybe holes that you see, or certain things that you may see that could eventually give you an advantage. There was times, and we see it all the time, especially in these kind of big high intensity games where the Lightning slowly advance down the ice. It may not happen in one sequence. It may not happen in over a couple of puck possessions. And the fact that the Lightning not only did that to get off to a good start, but then once Boston came back and tied it, were able to stay within that. I thought that was very good, and it was very positive to see them do that. And a big part of that as well was Andrei Vasilevskiy last night. What else could we say about Vazzy? I mean, I almost tweeted it last night, and then McAvoy scored, and then I was like, you know what? That's the hockey gods telling me. I was actually going to tweet out saying that he looked like his Vezina Trophy self, and I still think he did up until that point. I believe it was the Van Riemsdyk goal in which I think it looked like he had it, and then it just skipped through his legs. It might have been the McAvoy goal actually, but for the most part, I thought Vasilevskiy played very well last night. I thought this was the first game that we've seen from him in quite some time where you saw that level of play that I think he's been lacking all season. I don't know if it's just that familiarity with Boston. I don't know if it's the fact that these two teams have played each other quite a bit over the last couple of years. I don't know if Vazzy was just on last night. I don't know what it was, but the guy looked like his Vezina Trophy self. And if we could get more performances out of him like that over the next couple of months, the Lightning are going to be in a good spot to potentially catch up to the Florida Panthers and maybe even Boston. I mean, listen, this is a great win. I'm not going to say that the Lightning now are going to rattle off a phenomenal stretch over the next couple of months and win the division, but you take what you saw from last night's performance, their effort, their intensity, the way they played. You had your best player, who arguably is the best player in the league statistically, in Nikita Kucherov, scoring a power play goal and really doing a good job there, as well as you get contributions from your defenseman. Eric Chernak scoring his first goal of the year. I mean, if you've been a listener of this show for quite some time, you know anytime a defenseman scores, you kind of know it's going to be a good night for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so just a very good all-around effort. Yeah, very unfortunate that Boston was able to come back and after being down 2-0 and force it to a shootout. But I think all things aside, I think best case scenario, this was, they're just the way that was going. The fact that the Lightning were able to survive all the way to a shootout when Boston is surging, when kind of these two teams are kind of playing two different games where Boston was pretty much on the offensive, I think, for the remainder of the game. The Lightning were just weathering the storm. I mean, the Lightning killed off 6 power plays last night. That shows you what kind of game this was, as opposed to, what the Lightning were playing and what they were up against. So, a very good all-around effort there for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I hope that we could see that level of play, and we'll talk about it later on. We could see that level of play and that style of play carried over into tomorrow night's game against Colorado Avalanche. Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about Steven Stamkos. He's been surging of late. The guy's been phenomenal since the calendar hit 2024. We're going to talk about that coming up, and then a little later on, we'll wrap things up with our talk about the Colorado Avalanche. But in real quick, let's talk about our friends and sponsors over at Gametime. Now, listen, you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. My favorite thing is the last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. I went to a comedy show. It was last minute. Me and my buddy, we bought tickets for $60 each. Last minute. I'm talking about minutes before the doors close. And we were in there with our tickets, sitting down, laughing the night away. And you can, too, enjoy your next event with Gametime. The other favorite thing that I love about this is seeing your view from the seat before you buy. Nobody wants to sit behind a beam. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So as always, I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel there. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or whatever, you just want to reach out to me, you can either comment below this video or reach out to me on Twitter or X, or I still call it Twitter. I'll always call it Twitter, at Danky Dank, DENKY, I love hearing from all of you. So we just got done talking about a big win in Boston, but we're going to dial it back a little bit. You know, we're going to talk about something else that I think has really been sort of maybe not talked about as much. I mean, it should be. I think it should be an everyday conversation to be had, even though that it looks like he is staying in Boston for the long term. In Tampa for the long term, at least for this season. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen after the year is over, but Steven Stamkos, the captain, has been rolling since 2024 came into existence. Since January 2nd, and that's the Winnipeg game in which they lost, to last night, the guy has been playing phenomenal. 16 games, 7 goals, 11 points. His plus minus is rough, but listen, the guy, if he's scoring, if he's putting up points, if he's putting up goals, I'm fine with that. And the big thing about that it is really jumping out to me, that really you love to see, and really this is how I measure goals, because yeah, you know, an empty netter, that's a cheapie, whatever, even though I think they really should have a separate category for that. I think that one of the most valuable things that you could look at on a stat sheet, especially when you're trying to evaluate a scorer, a guy, like, and I think we could really at this point in time say that with very much confidence that Steven Stamkos is a scorer, is the game-winning goals. Now, he has 3 in the last 16 games. He has 2 of those that are even strength, and 2 more of that are, and he has 2 power play assists. So that shows you this guy has been doing a little bit of both. A little bit of everything, really. His shot percentage is at 13.7. I really don't read a lot into that stuff. The guy scores, he shoots, whatever. You know, a lot of people read into the shot percentage. I really don't, but I mean, I know like I think like the league average is about 10, so 10%. So that tells you the guy is pretty much doing a very good job of putting the puck in the back of the net. And given the recent issues, I will say, just given the recent talk this season with, is he coming back? You know, what are the Lightning going to do in terms of, you know, being able to figure something out with him? Should they trade him? You know, is he going to be able to be a big part of the team going forward? What I'm going to say about that, and what this recent stretch shows, is that I think that it's starting. If it hasn't already, it has. The guy just turned 34, by the way. Just turned 34 7 days ago. It is not lost on him that this might be his final stretch as a Tampa Bay Lightning player. And he is, I think we could all agree at this point in time, he is the face of the franchise. Will go down most likely as the greatest player in franchise history. And then Kucherov will retire, and then he'll be the greatest player in franchise history. But he will go down on, you know, if they have to make a Mount Rushmore of Lightning players, he's definitely up there. And I think that now that you're in possibly the last months of your tenure, and it doesn't seem like the guy wants to play anywhere else. Then again, who knows? I mean, he could turn around and sign somewhere else, as he is very much entitled to. Still, you know, he's 34. He probably has another, I don't want to assume, but maybe 6 more years, maybe a little less than that. But the guy knows that, you know, this place is what made him into what he is. This is his home. I know, we all know, I don't just know, but we all know that he is very close with a lot of players on this team. And this place is, it's hard. We all know, when you go, like when you graduated from high school and you went to college or whatever, you wanted to make the most of your last couple of months there before you potentially started new. Now, some of you went into the job force after high school, and that's cool too, but it's the same thing, You're just changing one environment for another, and I think that's kind of like where he's at right now, and I think that it's really helping him take his game to another level. Because there's that level of uncertainty that he hasn't seen in quite some time, to where, a couple of years ago when he re-signed, where we were all scared that he was going to go to Toronto, and then he ended up staying here. It's a little different now because the guy, I think, even though he, I think to a certain extent, I think he knew he was coming back here. But then, now it's a little different. The Lightning are going possibly in a different direction. They might have to make some unpopular moves this offseason in order to stay competitive, and that might involve not re-signing him. And I think he understands that now. And I think it's really starting to hit him. I think that also, besides the fact that this team has kind of been bouncing up and down, they played very well over the last month or so. But still, this could be his last rodeo to win one because, it's very possible that he could hit free agency, not be able to sign for the money that he wants, actually be getting less than what he would have wanted with Tampa Bay. Now, Tampa Bay at that point could make other moves and say, sorry, we don't have the cap. And then now he's stuck having to sign with some possible bottom of the barrel franchise to where he's going to have to tough it out for a year or so. But he's making the money or he's not making the money. And, this might be his last chance. So I think that's kind of part of it. And I think also, obviously, his resiliency as a leader, he's trying to do whatever he can to keep this team where they are, especially now with Sergachev being out of the picture possibly for the rest of the year. And, whatever happens with that in terms of trades, we'll keep an eye on. But I think that we're starting to see, especially, and I think this goes for any sport, whenever a long-term player of a franchise who's been around forever senses that their time is most likely going to be up, I think that it says a lot about that character of that player, because I'm sure there's some other players in other franchises that they just kind of pack it in, and we don't see that with this guy. We're seeing the effort night in, night out. He has 7 goals in his last 16 games and 11 points. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that. I mean, phenomenal play from this guy. Really, I don't know I can't predict how his games would be. I can't predict if the Lightning would win some of these games, if they wouldn't. I could only say for the ones that are in which he had those 3 game-winning goals. All I could say is that this guy is playing at a level of hockey that the Lightning wish they would get more from him. Excuse me as I plug in my laptop. But phenomenal play from him. Always keeping it professional here on the show. But always great to see this kind of play from him. And especially at this time of year, it cannot be understated how impressive it is from a guy like this. So let me in the comments below what you think about this on our YouTube page below this video. I'd love to hear from all of you, as well as, how long can he keep it up for? I mean, there's probably going to be a period, a cooling off period coming soon, hopefully later rather than sooner. But like I've said, this month of February, we got a lot going on. We got a lot of big games coming up. We got a lot of potential for the Lightning to go even higher up in the standings in the Atlantic Division. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on Stamkos. And we're certainly going to keep an eye on this team going forward into tomorrow night's game against Colorado Avalanche. McKinnon, Kucherov, Part 2. We're breaking it all down in just a little bit. But first, we're wrapping things up with our friends over at FanDuel. Now, listen, unfortunately, football season's over. The Kansas City Chiefs two-time defending Super Bowl champions, last team to repeat in major sports was the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I saw the comparisons. I'm not going to get into it. But listen, that doesn't mean sports is over since football is over. There's basketball to be had, there's hockey to be bet on, and you could get your buckets or your goals on your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams, or NHL players and teams. Quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So as always, and finally, one last time for today's show, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are shipped in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel there. And we just got done talking about Steven Stamkos, how just really of how big it is, I think. I think it hasn't really been spoken about enough, I think. Maybe I'm being a little biased, but we're going to get into another player, obviously, that we know on a nightly basis has really been carrying the torch for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that is Nikita Kucherov. But most importantly, not only are the Lightning playing the Colorado Avalanche, but this is also a big game for Kuch, because he will be going up against his MVP trophy adversary, and that is Nathan MacKinnon, who Nathan MacKinnon right now is second in the league in points, 87, with Kuch's 90, first player to get to 90 on the year. Goals are a little different. Austin Matthews currently leads the league with 42. McKinnon's tied for fifth with Zach Hyman at 32. And Kuch is at third with 34 goals on the year. I don't know. Everyone's different in hockey, I think. I think, it's different with, basketball, football, baseball. Obviously, they measure a lot of things. But I think that, that's the cool thing about hockey is that for the most part, unless a goalie is playing their butt off, I think really, everybody's kind of measured by the same stats. Baseball is a little different, like I said. Basketball, football, it depends on the year, depends on, I guess, the position. With hockey, the only thing, I think the goals, and maybe, I don't know, I feel like goals aren't as exciting anymore because, get a guy like Austin Matthews, and I think we kind of saw with Ovi too, all those years where he was really, scoring goal after goal after goal, 50 goals here, 50 goals there. He was winning Richard trophies, but not winning MVPs, and I think that really that's how it's viewed. I think that's really the borderline. I think if you're gonna get some votes for MVP, and obviously Matthews is gonna get some from the Toronto media, especially the Canadian media, and so is McDavid. But I think that when you look at these two guys, McKinnon and Kuch, I mean, you can't overlook what they've been doing with points. I mean, McKinnon is 10 more than McDavid. And really, that's the rest of the league after that. It's McDavid and Pastrnak and the rest of the league. And it's basically a two-horse race unless one of these guys gets injured between McKinnon and Kuch. And it's really going to be phenomenal. Not only tomorrow night when these two guys face off against each other, but it's also, I think that, I think in the back of their minds, I think especially after that Stanley Cup, which was really, in terms of if you were not biased as to who you wanted to win, I think really at the end of the day, I think that was a very disappointing Stanley Cup final a couple of years back between Tampa and Colorado. And I think that in the back of their mind, whether they care to admit it or not, I think the NHL, I think they would love nothing more than to see the two top candidates really battling it out, who are battling it out right now for the MVP, the Hart Trophy, to go back to the Stanley Cup final and settle it once and for all there. And what better way? What better way? You have the best, because let's face it, you have the best player from each conference, since both these guys are from opposing conferences. Not only to have a phenomenal game tomorrow night, because that's going to be a great game. The Lightning lost the first matchup 4-1 back in November to the Colorado Avalanche. These teams are pretty much neck and neck when it comes to team stats, but to have these guys go completely off, I'm talking like Cooch gets 3 points, a goal there. McKinnon maybe gets 1 or 2, couple of points there. I kind of hope so, to a certain degree, to where like McKinnon plays well. I mean, you always want to see the top guys play well, as long as it doesn't affect the outcome where the Lightning are losing. But I think, and I'm going to talk about this with the Avalanche, Locked On Avalanche guys, because I will be jumping on with them right after we end wrapping up this show. But I think really what it's going to come down to, because the rest of this Colorado team, they're no slouches. They got a good group of guys that could really hurt you. Mikko Rantanen, who phenomenal player. I think he's probably, other than McKinnon, I think Mikko Rantanen is like one of my favorite players on that team, as well as Bowen Byram and Sam Girard as well. I think that they have a good group of guys where, even if McKinnon's quiet, you have other players on this team that could definitely hurt you. And really, it's going to come down to, as cliche as this sounds, a goaltending matchup. You got Alexander Georgiev on one side, 28, 13, and 3, and then Vasilevsky, 18, 11, 0. Vasilevsky hit the 90% save mark the other night, which is good to see. Georgiev's a tad under 9 on the save percentage there, but goals against average is kind of pretty much the same. Vazzy's at 2.76. Georgiev is 2.94. I don't really read a lot into that, even though I would prefer Vazzy's a little lower. Prefer him to be at maybe 2.5. I think that's a good place to be. But like I said, yeah, these two teams are pretty much neck and neck everywhere else in team stats. Their power play, the Lightning have the best power play in the league, where Colorado's 7th. The penalty kill, the Lightning are 9th, where the Avalanche are 12th. The face-off percentage is the Lightning 10th and the Avalanche 24th, so a little bit further down the list there. That's where the Lightning's bread and butter is the face-off circle, so hopefully they could jump out and establish their dominance there as well. The Lightning are a little bit lower in terms of goals forced per game, which I don't really... I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't really look into that one as well, but I mean, I would prefer the Lightning are a little higher than that, but that means that they got to rely a little bit more on their goaltending there to win their game. So let me know in the comments below what you think about this. A lot of hype for this game. I don't know if this game is... No, it's not on national TV, which is pretty crazy to think about. You kind of figured that the league would try to... And I don't know who else is playing tomorrow night, so that could also be a factor as well. But we'll definitely be watching this one. We'll definitely discuss it as it unfolds. We'll probably drop an episode either during or after the game, so keep an eye out for that. So hit that notification button wherever you are listening to us on an app. So as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified and you'll be able to listen. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with an episode with the guys from Locked On Avalanche, and we'll also come out with an episode of our own detailing the game after it commences or as it is going on. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.